I feel compelled, that's right, compelled, to respond to a viewer that made the statement that, how do you rationalize giving dating advice as someone who doesn't believe in monogamy or somebody who doesn't believe in marriage? Do you realize that almost all women want to get married? Nah, you don't say. Let's clarify something a little bit here. I'm not against marriage. I'm not against monogamy. It just, the message gets lost somewhere when you're throwing out these bits of truth nuggets, because as soon as you say anything against this powerful institution, people automatically assume that you're shitting on it. That's not true. So let me just give you a little bit of clarification here. Number one, I am not against marriage. What I am against is settling. Two entirely different principles. I'm against people that settle. What do I mean by that? They use marriage as a default as opposed to a choice. Now, I know a lot of us out there think they make choices in life when they're actually just defaulting to what the next socially appropriate benchmark is. That's what I have a problem with. Oh, what else am I going to do? I need to find somebody to complete me. I'm not living my own adventures. I don't want to really do anything. I got to settle down so I'm not going to grow old alone. That is settling. And yes, for the record, I am 100% against that. Do I find that monogamy is bad? No, it's great. I'm saying it's not super realistic, just like Santa Claus isn't super realistic. Does it mean it can't happen? No, it doesn't mean it can't happen. Is it for everybody? No, it's not for everybody. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's not for most people. Can you make it work? Sure you can. Are you happier and better for it? I'm not so sure. I think that depends. But to say I'm against monogamy, no, of course. I'm for monogamy just like I wish there was a Santa Claus. I wish that it was so easy for people to do that. And that is how we were naturally designed. If it were, it would probably save a lot of marriages and a lot of relationships that would have otherwise been fantastic experiences. But unfortunately, it's not really the case. And instead of glossing over that fact, we tend to jump right into these things and pretend like that doesn't exist and just hope it works out for the best. And according to statistics, I think it may behoove a lot of people to maybe look at it a little more like I do. But that is not to say that I'm against marriage, I'm against committed relationships, or I'm against any of that. It just means that I'm a realist when it comes to this. And I think instead of jumping feet first into something that has a lot of serious ramifications for both parties, I would say especially for the guy, one should think about that and think about what you really want instead of just defaulting to that. I just find it kind of funny that there's so many like people that want to consider themselves progressive and open-minded and all these things, but yet our society, our default mode is let me tie myself to one person for the rest of my life, and without even thinking about it, because that's just what we do. You know, and why we don't ever talk about why we actually do it. There's not a discussion about it. If there is a discussion about it, people get butthurt about it. Look, if I'm being real about this, do I know that women want to get married? Most women, of course I do. Even when they say they don't, I know that they really do. All men know this. We're keenly aware that that is the ultimate destination. And to be fair, there's a lot of men out there that want the same thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're a woman, I completely understand why you'd want to get married. Marriage is more suited to your nature. Domestication is more suited to your biological nature as a whole. Not trying to offend anybody. Relax. I think it's pretty reasonable to state that for a lot of women out there, it's a natural thing to go and get married. That security is a big deal. But for a lot of men, not all, a lot of men, it's a very scary proposition. On paper, it looks really nice. Who doesn't want that one person that's special to them, that they can count on, and they can grow old with? That looks lovely on paper, but in reality, there's a lot more variables than that. It gets a lot more messy. And while it's a fine idea 200 years ago, it does lack a little something to be desired in terms of, in my opinion, fairness in the court systems. And also, it doesn't take into consideration the fact that guys do have different natures. And again, there's a lot of women out there that it's not their nature to want to settle down either, but we have to be realistic, I think. Aren't we mature enough to understand that this whole thing is kind of broken, as evidenced by the massive amounts of money made by the divorce industry? If you can't recognize that, well, then there's nothing I'm going to be able to say. It's going to make you feel better about the institution of marriage, right or wrong. It's just going to make you feel like, oh, he's bitter, you know? No, not true. I don't think so at all. But I do think that we naturally default to it as society and as individual members of that society. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing. That's all. That's all I'm saying. So before you get your panties in a bundle, understand what I'm saying. I'm not against any of that stuff. I am against the settling without thinking aspect of it, and that emotional clinginess or that emotional desperation of worried about being alone. I have never heard anybody say they want to get married for positive reasons. What do I mean by that? When someone gets married, I have to go through my normal series of jokes and, you know, harass them a little bit. I typically will ask them, okay, why are you doing it? Why this girl? Why are you doing it? And, oh, she's great. If it's a guy. If it's a woman, they rarely say anything about the guy. It's usually, oh, don't you want to be married? Don't you want to have that one person? Well, yeah, but yeah, we all do. Gentlemen, this is a clear message to you. If you're going to go down that hole, it's totally acceptable. There's nothing wrong with it. If it's the right one, how do you know if it's the right one? Separate video. But you better make sure that it's the right one, because there is a huge downside for a guy if this marriage does not work out. And again, statistically speaking, it's a good chance that it won't. Why? Because there's a lot of variables. It's a very difficult world to navigate to start with. Then you talk about society at large, especially nowadays, with all the options, all the temptations. And guess what? Our biological natures have not changed. They have not evolved. I'm sorry. So it's very unrealistic, and it's downright ignorant and dangerous to ignore that fact, because there's the potential downside is very, very scary. Are there ramifications and potential consequences? Potential negative consequences for women in marriage? Absolutely. Of course, I'm not denying that. But if you contrast that to what a male's experience could potentially be, it is overwhelming. The fact that it's really difficult for us to even talk about, with us being called a pussy, or with us being verbally castrated because we just want to jump into a marriage because we're trying to be mature about it, make an educated decision. That's not fair. And that pretty much tells you why it could be potentially dangerous for a guy, because you're not even allowed to talk about that stuff without being chastised. Empathize a little bit. Understand what it's like. And I do understand that women want to get married, of course. Have you come to me with a diamond ring lately? As I said before, no one came to me with a jet ski and was like, hey, let's get married. No one's done that. I don't know about you. That pretty much sets the stage for the remainder of the relationship, does it not? These progressive outlooks, but yet we're still doing some fucking antiquated shit, aren't we? If that were the other way around, would that be considered sexist? Yeah, probably. So yeah, I do have a problem with settling. You know, blindly settling is not what I call a wise decision. I think you better make sure that you understand that partner, and you understand that partner understands what it's like to be the opposite sex in that dynamic, and truthfully understand what it's like, not this modern day idealistic way of looking at it, but truthfully understand the nitty-gritty about what a committed relationship actually entails and what a man goes through during those situations. And if they don't understand that and they don't want to learn because they don't think they have to, well, there's your answer right there. Don't do it. We're not perfect. So that being said, knowing that we're not perfect and knowing that things go south very quickly, the system being what it is, just to take money from other people and to give to other people just because you love them, seems a little bit crazy to me and not very progressive at all. Actually sounds pretty ancient and morbid and sick to me. But that being said, I'm not against marriage. The concept of it I love. I just don't think you should settle as a default. And I believe there's probably a lot of you out there that agree with me. I just think you should be educated about it. I think you should be honest about it with your partner before that ever happens. That's all. That being said, if you like the video, please subscribe, please share, please like, and till then, stay dangerous.